And who needs a federal election anyway, right? Jeepers creepers. Borders are pshaw. Fentanyls are maybe on February 28th, right? Is there a February 29th this year? February 29th, if there's a February 29th. The last possible second we could possibly do it, that's when we'll do it, I guess. Porsche is going to produce the combustion engine again. They're backing away from EVs. I'll show you that at the end of the show. Big Balls has a Canadian connection, excuse me. And so apparently Big Balls, the 19-year-old phenom who got fired and rehired by DOGE for having inappropriate comments online under the pseudonym Big Balls, is Canadian. So that's interesting. We'll talk about that for a little while. Ukraine and Trump Putin meeting. And so there's stuff going on there, including precious rare metals and other things like that being used to pay the United States for the bill that's currently owed and Trump intends on collecting. And ostriches are back on the chopping block. That is very interesting and not great at all. We're going to be talking about tariffs. We're going to be talking about USAID, and we're going to be talking about Global Affairs Canada and the amount of money they're wasting, because they are wasting a crap ton of it. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. The PSYOP is strong, and Canadians are being... So remember how we were taught to hate the unvaccinated, or taught to hate people who didn't believe in all of the things that we're supposed to believe in. Any of the open borders is good for Canada, all that stuff. That stuff, we had a whole big push to make sure that everybody in Canada knew what was the right side to be on and the wrong side according to the government. And everybody listened, I guess, except for me and a few other people, dozens of us. So it's interesting to watch that same tactic, that same trick being utilized in this trade war against the United States. And do you not believe me maybe that most people are falling for it? Well, I've got some footage to show you. Here's Ryan. He says Canadians booing a 15-year-old girl singing the American national anthem at the Raptors game is a new low. It's that easy to program people, but to also lose your morals is next level. So that's wild, right? I heard the same thing happen at the opening of the Invictus Games. I'm just showing this to you to show you how brainwashed people are. We won't listen to the whole thing. I just want you to get a taste of what's going on. And the woman, or the girl singing this, sounds amazing. She sounds like great. And so it sucks that she's getting booed for this. Here we go.
Would you please welcome 15-year-old Kyra Daniel.
So you see, so the PSYOP is strong at the Raptors game everywhere. And so let's talk about Danielle Smith and Doug Ford. And they're asking, hey, federal government, where the heck is the fentanyl czar? Where's the borders are? What's going on? Here's Doug Ford to say that. And, well, I'll tell you what I think about this in just a second. Here's Doug Ford.
My question again to Prime Minister Trudeau, where is the fentanyl czar? It's been now 5 days, I believe, and time is running out. We can't be waiting till the last minute. Please appoint a fentanyl czar. Start showing the Americans what we are doing. Show the Trump administration that we have helicopters and fixed wing aircraft and boots on the ground and boats in the water and ATVs up and down. That's what Ontario is doing. But we need to see action from the federal government.
I don't know about the end bumper there, but Ford is asking, begging the federal government do something, listing the things that he says Ontario is doing. A lot of vehicles, a lot of ATVs, boots on the ground. He says, I don't know numbers of boots on the ground, hundreds more, thousands more. But anyway, here's Danielle Smith. She says, I agree with Premier Ford. What's the holdup in Ottawa? And for me, personally, I think that all the provincial governments should be appointing their own fentanyl czar, and then ask them to plug in to the federal fentanyl czar and make it seamless as possible. Here's what we're doing, fentanyl czar. I'm going to interface with you on the very first day so you can have a very clear idea of what's happening in Ontario, so you don't have to come up to speed by yourself or set up your own infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. We're already in the midst of it. Hi, federal government. No, you're not in charge here. You can just be an observer to watch what we're doing, I guess, because the federal government's not actually interested in doing this. They're going to appoint a fentanyl czar, and if it's not Bill Blair, it might be Marie Hogue, or it might be who is it, Johnston, right? Like, are you going to go to China to pick your person, or what's happening? Are you waiting for China to let you know who to choose? They're trying to craft a job description that is Sounds good, but is bullshit, right? So sounds good, but they actually can't do anything. That's what they're trying to do. That's probably the holdup, if you ask me. Justin Trudeau says, our Canada-U.S. economic summit today is bringing together leaders like Bea Bursk and Candice Lang, who are united in one goal, protecting Canadian jobs and industries. So how come he hasn't appointed a border czar rather than attending these bullshit meetings? I don't know. It's weird, right? Super duper weird that the leader of Canada is not interested in following through with the promises he made to Donald Trump a few days ago in order to avoid a massive trade war that he loses. Doug Ford again says, any thug convicted of destroying communities by selling or trafficking fentanyl needs to be locked up and put away. The federal government needs to pass strict and severe minimum mandatory sentences. And again, it's weird that Doug Ford is passing all of this off to the federal government. He's the one who's in charge of Ontario. He's the one who's got right now they've got a majority as well, right? There's nobody really even challenging Ford. Here's Ford talking about fentanyl in Ontario.
I'm urging the federal government to introduce strict and severe mandatory minimum sentences for criminals convicted of drug trafficking. Any thug caught destroying communities like that, they need to be locked up for a long, long time. No ifs, ands, or buts. They're gone. They're done.
So, why aren't we doing that now? If you could do that, why aren't you doing that? Here's Mark Emery. He says, I had one joint in Winnipeg, Manitoba, was jailed, clothed in orange prison overalls, sent to remand, ordered to make bail, warned if I smoked pot on my legalization tour, I was subject to arrest and detention without bail. Mr. Singh hauls $50 million in meth into Canada and gets a curfew. Pretty crazy, says Mark Emery. 401 Das Barnich says, CBSA seized $50 million of meth concealed in suitcases inside a tractor trailer entering Manitoba at the U.S. border. 29-year-old Kolmapreet Sindhu was arrested. Passport surrendered to the RCMP. Curfew, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. with a GPS monitor. So a very hard slap on the wrist for Mr. Singh, right? So Mark Emery gets to go to prison. Mr. Singh's, don't you do that again, sir. You wear this GPS monitor. In Ontario, OPP seized 4 trucks, 63 trailers, 10 passenger vehicles from Side Road 5 in Chatsworth Township. 41 YO from Grand Valley faces 41-year-old from Grand Valley faces over 60 charges, including possession of property obtained by crime, altering and removing VINs, and other things. So it's very interesting. What's going on, all this crime, and Doug Ford is saying, oh, wow, we're going to throw the book at people who are trafficking in drugs and things like that. And it's interesting, too, one of the hallmarks and the features of having a mostly foreign trucking industry, which is what Canada kind of has right now, is that you can have people who are using the same passport for different people because people don't look too closely, and you can have all of this crime going. But more importantly, if you get caught, right, then no harm, no foul. You get bail and you go home back to whatever country you came from. And, well, Canada's kind of left holding the bag. There's illegal things happen. There's time entered on the legal docket, and, they're going to deal with this and blah, 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 blah. But the person who's the target of all this is gone, and the trucking company just keeps going forward. Nothing to see here, no problems. Oh, yeah, that driver was problematic. We fired him, right? And we hired 10 more different ones who definitely aren't his cousins. Wink, wink, right? The whole thing is pretty crazy, and there's different aspects of the drug trade operating in Canada. So they have production and they have transportation distribution, right? So on one side, you've got these people who are coming in from China along with the precursors, along with all of the stuff to make the fentanyl. They work in Canada. If they get arrested, the charges don't stick or they're let out on bail, they go back to China and no problems, right? Nothing to worry about, and their production really goes uninterrupted. They can even use the super labs, because do they get dismantled or just left for the next person to come back and use it again? It seems weird, right? And so the weird thing about the fentanyl labs is the small arrests, and nobody seems worried about these people who are producing fentanyl just leaving, anything like that. Nobody's worried about that. So they get let out and they get able to produce more or just disappear into the wind, right? And then they have distribution. And I mean, those are two key parts of any, multi-billion-dollar international organized crime ring, right? So they're allowed to operate, and it's very, very interesting. Mark Nixon says, explosive, top-tier Asian organized crime, suspected corruption, CBSA accused of letting major drugs slip through Canada's through Canada's customs. Trudeau's proximity to crime-linked donors raised red flags. RCMP Intel chief leaked Five Eyes secrets. So this is a report from Sam Cooper and at the Bureau, and it's really, really crazy stuff. And he says veteran law enforcement officials, this was published on February 8th. Today is the 9th. Veteran law enforcement officials, both active and retired from United States and Canada, have come forward with explosive allegations suggesting that Canada's federal government may have systemically obstructed investigations into the highest levels of Asian organized crime. According to these sources, American agencies, including U.S. Department of Homeland Security, have grown so alarmed by suspected corruption and legal loopholes in Canada that they have effectively sidelined Canadian enforcement from sensitive investigations and intelligence sharing. That's pretty bad. That's not good at all. Several veterans of Canadian law enforcement argue that while U.S. President Donald Trump's critique of Canada's handling of fentanyl trafficking and border security are politically charged and often harsh, they underscore an uncomfortable reality. Canada is increasingly perceived as compromised, either incapable or unwilling to confront entrenched transnational criminal networks. American and Canadian sources alike describe a nation whose law enforcement agencies are in disarray, inhabited by suspected infiltration at the highest levels, obstructing investigations into billion-dollar drug networks and money laundering operations. The money laundering is another big one. Like, I'm not a big money guy, and I'm sorry that I'm not. If I was, I think I'd be richer. But I think that as much corruption as I see in the political world, I think that there's equal corruption on spreadsheets in the financial world. And I just don't dig into that because I'm not interested in it. And the story it's not interesting in my head. And so I don't think it'll be interesting to you. If I'm not interested in it like candy, then I don't think you'll be interested in it. And so that's just how I am. So apologies, but oh well, we get what we get, right? Anyway, carrying on. But I think that the corruption is spread out and ubiquitous everywhere. These Americans and Canadian experts pointed to the notorious case of Cameron Ortiz, Canada's former top police intelligence official who was convicted of leaking Five Eyes signals intelligence to some of the world's most dangerous Iranian state-sponsored criminals. His case, still cloaked in national security secrecy, is believed to have also involved Chinese espionage investigations. But concerns about corruption within Canada's law enforcement and intelligence agencies extend far beyond Ortiz himself, according to enforcement experts who spoke on the condition of anonymity due to the sensitivity of the matter. Several said the U.S. officials suspected corruption within the ranks of the Canadian border authorities, yet those suspected allegedly retained their security clearances. Quote, "It was mind-boggling. The Americans would say we have good reason to suspect that this particular CBSA officer is corrupt," a Canadian policing expert said. This information would be provided to higher-ups in CBSA with the understanding that this particular CBSA officer is not to show up at any future joint meetings. So eventually there would be a meeting, and the CBSA officer in question would show up at the meeting. The lead American investigator would end the meeting before it started. The Americans would shake their head in disgust and disbelief. The experts said this growing distrust is a key reason why the United States has scaled back its collaboration with Canadian law enforcement over the past decade, 10 years. The border, as it is run now, Homeland Security, they have no respect for CBSA, Canada Border Services Agency. None, the experts said. CBSA were seen as tax collectors for picking on families coming across the border with 2 bottles of wine and not actually doing police seizures of proper amounts of drugs coming through the border. It was a long-standing joke that they were basically collecting taxes for a mom and dad driving back with 2 packs of cigarettes and too many 6-packs of beer, while behind it there's a truck coming with 200, 300, 500 kilos of cocaine. It was just ridiculous, and that's how Homeland Security and DEA saw CBSA. And I don't want to paint every CBSA officer with that brush as being useless. Some of them are excellent people, they added, but it's just run so poorly. The level of incompetence within Canadian law enforcement is staggering. I don't think people understand. If they did, they'd probably be too scared to know how bad it actually is. Several veteran law enforcement officers say concerns extend beyond Canada's ability to confront transnational crime to the country's policing leadership itself. According to 2 RCMP experts, quiet surveillance operations have raised alarms after placing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and former cabinet ministers in proximity to Asian organized crime suspects. Ask Andy Lee, it's all public. There were real concerns about Asian organized crime figures being at Liberal fundraisers with access to Prime Minister Trudeau, one veteran enforcement source said. This is deeply concerning. It was openly discussed in some units. Again, when you are talking about billions of dollars in criminal profits, this equals real power and influence. I'm not accusing the Prime Minister or any politician of being corrupt, but we would be naive to think that ultra-rich criminals don't use their resources in an attempt to sway or influence prominent people. You wouldn't say that they're corrupt? I mean, holy smoke. What does it take? What does it take? Jeepers creepers. Here's Jason. He says, the U.S. government and law enforcement view Canadian government and RCMP as so compromised, they're now conducting investigations into Canada without Canada's cooperation. This is huge. Trump's tariffs were a warning shot. Canada shares the largest unguarded border in the world with the United States. If they perceive Canada as enough of a national security threat to launch investigations without our involvement, then this means our own agencies are no longer trusted, which means the American administration views our government as potentially hostile. When we land on Mark Carney as our unelected Prime Minister, we will have a mountain of problems to deal with since his relationship with China and their joined criminal organizations appear to run deeper than Trudeau's. Canada is not a serious country. Trump knows this and is taking action. And he's responding to the Sam Cooper stuff that I just read to you. So that's crazy town, right? And the stuff that's being talked about on CBC is not at all pertinent, not at all really what we should be focusing on. Here's a border mayor saying Trump is creating an economic threat. Here we go.
Donald Trump's 30-day tariff pause. Now, as this back and forth continues, mayors from border cities have formed an alliance to bring the municipal response to the discussion.
It is really basically economic terrorism against Canada. And there's side issues that pop up and that distract.
Is this man an adult? He's got Baby Yoda. He's got a teddy bear with a tie on. He's got all sorts of strange. Is in his parents' basement? Also, it looks like he's got a house coat on, and his hair is a mess. What?
All of us, but the real issue is to destabilize Canada. So then this initiative that Trump has boasted about so many times to make us the 51st state can move forward. And that's what we're fighting. The border city mayors, we're all different politics, all different views on the U.S., but we're come together for one cause, which is to keep Canada strong and keep Canada together. This cat and mouse game is going to continue for 4 years. We're aware of that. The good news is that more and more mayors have joined this effort, the big city mayors, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, all these other mayors groups. Before, we were very lonely voices out there for the last 6 weeks with our knowledge of what's going on in the U.S., saying you should be very concerned about this.
I think that the corruption within our government should concern all of us, and the government corruption doesn't end at just the city mayors. I think city mayors are corrupt. How many of them have gone to international conferences to talk about climate change? I think they're all corrupt. They don't swear an oath to the citizens. They swear an oath to some corporatocracy that they're going to do all of the globalist things and make sure that they get money from all of the rich people who are supporting the globalist things. And all of the rich people supporting the globalist things are getting money from USAID. So that's pretty weird. Or Global Affairs Canada, et cetera, et cetera. I wouldn't be surprised if those mayors are funded by Global Affairs Canada largely. Here's Peter Sweden. And the reason I wanted to show you what CTV was focusing on is because oftentimes the news doesn't tell us what's going on. And so the news isn't talking about USAID and all of the things that are going on in the United States. And the reason they don't talk about it, same reason our media is not really talking about it and trying to frame Trump as the bad guy here, is because in our country, as in the United States, people have figured out how to game our system, and people have figured out how to fleece it, how to take a little bit off the top just for themselves, and it's gotten out of control. And they don't want, and we're going to talk about Global Affairs Canada right after we go through the USAID stuff, because the two things rhyme, but governments don't want their news talking about it, because then they're going to have a bunch of people who are pissed off that their tax dollars are going to fund trans operas in Italy for no reason at all, right? I don't know if the trans operas are happening in Italy. They might be happening in Vietnam. So it's crazy town. Anyway, Peter Sweden highlights this. He says the mainstream media in Sweden is refusing to talk about the U.S. aid scandal. Instead, they're attacking Elon Musk and Trump as dangers to democracy for dismantling U.S. aid. Why won't they report that U.S. aid gave millions to fund far-left activists and activities all around the world? I was watching Brett Weinstein on Joe Rogan while I was shoveling the driveway this morning. We got a ton of snow in Ontario. I think Guelph got away lucky, and I think we got something like 10 centimeters. It's fun. It was nice and light to shovel, and kids are having fun. But I was listening to this Rogan, and Weinstein and Rogan were talking about how terrible all of this funding was and like all this corruption. And Weinstein started to make a point, started to get on the side of U.S. aid. And I was like, man, like this didn't take long, right? Didn't take long to find their talking points. And so the whole argument was, Joe, what about all the disaffected people? Like USAID does some good. It's not all corrupt, right? So we have to make sure those poor disaffected people, like, you want a social safety net, don't you, Joe? And I was like, nope, no social safety net. And my wife was like, what? I said, nothing, because I'm listening with one ear, right? And then he starts making this comment like, oh, you know, some grants, you want to make sure poor people can get access to grants, don't you, Joe? And I was like, no grants, cut off all the grants, cut off social safety net. You can get a job. You can have a job to get out of your debt. You can figure that one out. You can go talk to people and you can figure out what you can do for them that they'll pay you for. You can do that. There you go. There's a social safety net for you. An economy that can give you a job. There you go, sir. Right? You could buy land. You can figure it out. But no. A grant. How about a grant for some guidance on what you should do to get out of being poor? Step 1, get a job. There you go. Open up the wanted ads. So I thought it was very snaky to kind of play concern troll, like, oh yes, I'm also concerned about US aid spending and all of the fraud that I'm about to underline for you. But you know what's more important? What about the poor people, Joe? Like, no, we're not there. And I have no intention of going back there again. Communism doesn't work, even if there are poor people. Okay. And the way to stop the poor people, the way to help the poor people, is to lower the price of inputs, make gas and food as cheap as possible, no taxes on any of them, and create a situation where the economy is desperately crying out for people to work. Please come and work for me. You can stock shelves and then make enough money to rent something, buy your chocolate cereal, and, you know, maybe buy a pack of smokes too, and your Disney Plus membership. Right? Like, it's one of those things that you don't help poor people by giving them complicated grants to work out for USAID to disperse through bureaucracy. That's a good way to make people poor. Holy smoke, bureaucracy doesn't work like that. Excuse me, bureaucracy does work like that, but it doesn't work to fix the problems. Bureaucracy works to enrich itself. And that's the cold, hard truth, unfortunately. Here's Scott Moe. And this is, the whole time I was watching this, I thought to myself, this is an ad for for Canada to become the 51st state. Here we go. His tweet says, The economies of Canada and the United States are linked in so many ways. Let's focus on what we do well: continental food, energy, and manufacturing security. So this is like, let's all become the 51st state. Kumbaya. Not really. He's making the argument that economically we're so entwined that, you know, it's obvious that we should work together. And again, my brain extrapolates out into 51st state. Here we go.
Regardless of where you might farm in North America, agriculture demonstrates the very integration of the Canadian and American economies. For example, a farmer might start at his local dealer where he might order a CNH quad track. Well, those are made in Fargo, North Dakota. He's going to fill it with diesel from a refinery in Edmonton or maybe one in from Texas. It's then hooked up to an air drill that might be made in St. Bruce, Saskatchewan. The genetics for the seeds that are being planted are quite likely developed at the Crop Development Center at the University of...
I'm just going to fast forward it to the end there because he makes the point for quite a while. It's like a minute, okay?
Pulling grain trailers that are built in Anaheim, Saskatchewan. And it's off on the road to a processor that might be located in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You see, our agricultural sector is integrated across our continent. It's linked, and it creates jobs on both sides of the border. And in doing so, we create food security, not only for North Americans, but we export that very food security around the world. So let's focus on what we do well. We provide continental food, energy, and manufacturing security for the residents that live in North America.
51st state. Okay, thanks Scott Moe for pointing out how integrated our economies are. Good job. When do you want to sign the paperwork to become the 51st state? Oh, that wasn't what that was? Sorry, I misunderstood. Okay, let's talk about USAID. Real AF Patriot says, in case you missed it, it's been 17 days since I took office. This is Trump, and if you were watching Q, and future proves past, if you don't like Q, I'm sorry, we're going to talk about it. It seems that the Q operation was real. I think so. I think the fact that Donald Trump won re-election, despite the fact that they were trying to rig it against him, proves it. I think that a lot of the things that he's doing are tags back to the things he said during the 2016 to 2020 presidential, his last administration. And so it's really, really interesting. He's got a 17. There are big supercuts of Trump talking about 17. I don't know why it's his favorite number. I don't know why it's has anything to do with anything. But he continually references it. And so I don't know what the reference is, but there's a little breakdown here that I kind of like, and I'll read it to you. But here's Trump himself talking about all he's accomplished in 17 days. And you'll notice that he says the number 17 a bunch. Here you go.
It's been just 17 days since I took the oath of office. Wow, 17 days. It's time still flies. It's 17 days. It's gone. I've been so busy that it's hard to believe. But we've done a lot in 17 days, haven't we? And in those 17 days, we've accomplished really what some people haven't accomplished in 8 years. It's been just 7.
So in 8 years, they've been trying to take Trump down. 8 years, they've been trying to use anything they could possibly use to take him down. 17 days, he's dismantled the deep state, he's saying. That's kind of the color here. So my interpretation, he says, it's gone means their money is gone. He shut it all down in just 17 days. They had 8 years to shut him down, and they failed. It was a big FU to the deep state. 5 times he made me go look at Q drop 5. Or 5 times made me go look at Q drop 5, and it's right on the money with what's happening now. I don't know about these kind of Q callbacks. I just thought the 17 over and over again, and saying I did it in 17 days, and you guys couldn't do it in 8 years, and like you guys suck, and here I am standing tall. I think that's interesting. Big Balls and End Wokeness says Doge was worth it for this supercut. So Big Balls is one of the people who's exposing all this corruption, and the mainstream media can't stand him. Here we go.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with Musk and Big Balls.
Big Balls.
Big balls.
Big Balls, who worked for Elon Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE.
In the one case of the Big Balls kid, a literal teenager.
Big Balls online, Big Balls here, that Katie's talking about.
A 19-year-old that goes by the username Big Balls.
So that would be one way that we could refer to him.
Young computer whizzes, the aforementioned Big Balls.
Because who among us doesn't feel better about big balls in charge of American air traffic control?
I'm glad Big Balls is in charge of American air traffic control. Thank you, Rachel Maddow. Here's this guy talking about how Big Balls is doing the Lord's work. Here we go.
So did I just hear that some kid, 19-year-old kid that Elon Musk hired, is just cracked the code on the deep state? He's the one who's helping push all this stuff out, like exposing all this deep state shit. And he's a reformed hacker, which to me is even better. Like, I love that. I don't know why, I just do. And he's from Canada too. Like, there you go, Justin Trudeau. Your home. I'm just, man, I don't even know what to say right now. It's just awesome. I love that. So just saying, when we all unite, we all start kind of actually working together here. It works. And shout out to, I don't even know this kid's name. He goes by Big Balls apparently, which is, the dude must have some big balls. Fuck. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I like this kid. Fuck yeah. Run it, bro. See what else you can find. Keep going. Fuck CNN for hating on you. If they say anything, like, doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah. Good job, Elon Musk, Trump, and the kid Big Balls. So did I just...
There you go. So people are, I don't know who that guy is. I just thought his take was kind of like, yeah, sure, man. I'm on the side of this kid who I don't know versus all of these scammers and losers and et cetera, who have been stealing from me for the last, I don't know, 30, 40 years. Yeah. I'm on the side of this kid, this 19-year-old kid who's taking down their whole grift. Yep. I agree. Here's Jeff. He says, Elon, there are currently over $100 billion a year of entitlements paid to individuals with no SSN or even a temporary ID number. I had to read this 3 different times because I was sure I had misread things. Our taxes should be half of what we're paying. So here's Elon Musk talking about, this is in the wrong spot. This is supposed to be the next one, but I'll just do this. Elon Musk says, to be clear, what the DOGE team and the U.S. Treasury have jointly agreed to make sense is the following. Require that all outgoing government payments have a payment categorization code, which is necessary in order to pass financial audits. This is frequently left blank, making audits almost impossible. All payments must also include a rationale for the payment in the comment field, which is currently left blank. Importantly, we are not not yet applying any judgment to this rationale, but simply requiring that some attempt be made to explain the payment more than nothing. The do not pay list of entities known to be fraudulent or people who are dead or are probable fronts for terrorist organizations or do not match congressional appropriations must actually be implemented and not ignored. Also, it can currently take up to a year to get on this list, which is far too long. This list should be updated at least weekly, if not daily. The above super obvious and necessary changes are being implemented by existing long-time career government employees, not anyone from DOGE. It's ridiculous that these changes didn't exist already. Yesterday, I was told that there are currently over $100 billion a year of entitlement payments to individuals with no SSN or even a temporary ID number. If accurate, this is extremely suspicious. When I asked if anyone at Treasury had a rough guess of what percentage of that number is unequivocal and obvious fraud, the consensus in the room was about half, so $50 billion a year or $1 billion a week. This is utterly insane and must be addressed immediately. Yes. Yep, we're in a situation where they're bilking us for a lot of money. Tom says lawyers' perspective on the court issuing a TRO blocking Trump's DOGE employees from accessing access to Treasury data. So judge orders sweeping restrictions on DOGE access to sensitive Treasury payment systems. I don't think all of the stuff, I've been doing a bit of reading this morning as well, but all of the stuff that the judge said couldn't happen isn't happening. And it seems like a head fake of an order, like they're implying with this order that these things are happening, but these things are not happening. The people who have access have security clearances. They're part of the government. Like all of the stuff is, all the T's are crossed and the I's dotted, right? So like they're trying to make the implications and then they're trying to revoke access and remove things using false pretenses, as far as I understand it. So there's more to this story, but I think it's more of kind of a deep state attack. Elon Musk says this ruling is insane. How on earth are we supposed to stop fraud and waste of taxpayer money without looking at how the money is spent? It's impossible. Something super shady is going on to protect scammers. So that's the point of this judge coming up with this ruling. And people are saying we should take the judge, like we should remove the judge from, he should be impeached. That's what basically people are saying. This is the tweet I was looking for that was in the wrong spot. Errol says more than $500 billion taxpayer dollars were effed off last year. Everyone should be raging mad. Congress funneled $516 billion into expired programs with zero oversight in 2024. The CBO just revealed that Congress spent $516 billion in 2024 on programs with expired authorizations, some dating back over 40 years. Despite rules against funding unauthorized programs, lawmakers ignored them, letting billions flow without updated approvals or oversight. Even worse, 251 more authorizations are set to expire this year, including $892 billion in defense spending, yet Congress keeps writing blank checks. This isn't governance, it's corruption. Congress is recklessly burning taxpayer money on programs that they haven't bothered to approve. So that's pretty wild stuff. And if they approve them, then there's some kind of paper trail, right? If they're just funding these things and there's no paper trail and it doesn't exist, it could just be disappeared right away. Elon Musk responds to Peter Sweden. Peter said, so U.S. aid is basically a form of money laundering taxpayers' money into far-left organizations. Elon Musk says, absolutely. So yeah, it's happening in Canada too. I'll get there in just a second. Mario says, Elon, Treasury staff tried to stop fraud for years, but management blocked them. He says, quote, I do want to credit the working level people in Treasury who have wanted to do this for many years, but have been stopped prior by management. Everything at Treasury was geared towards complaint minimization. People who receive money don't complain, but people who don't receive money, especially fraudsters, complain very loudly. So the fraud was allowed to continue. Yep, that's what we're dealing with. Kanoka the Great says, Dems, we need 80,000 IRS agents to audit your $600 Venmo payments. And reps say there are over $100 billion annual entitlement payments to people without social security numbers. Dems, auditing is extremely dangerous to our democracy. So it's fraud. They're the fraudsters, okay? If you don't think that they're also using the money to pay for geoengineering, well, this guy thinks that. I think that too. Here we go.
Think that cloud seeding and weather manipulation is not a thing. Come on, hold on. So not only is it a real thing, your tax-paying dollars in that USAID, all that money was actually going to it. Yeah, this example right here is Idaho Power, $2 million grant. That's just one example. Hold on. We got George Mason over here getting around almost $500,000. Yep, for research. on cloud seed. Wow, weather manipulation. Oh, hold on. And this is saying it about perfectly. You don't release heavy metal particles in the air and surround the Earth with microwave towers unless you want things to die. They're going to pay for what they've done. But I highly encourage you to research HARP, geoengineering, and cloud seeding. And you'll realize that all the weather manipulation, everything has been done by the evil cabal of the previous governments. Man, justice is coming. I love y'all.
I hope so. It seems pretty, a lot of people that I'm talking to, I was talking to my mom and I said to her, hey, it seems like geoengineering is, it seems cold lately and it seems like the geoengineering is kind of slowing down or whatever. And she said, oh yeah, the cloud seeding. I haven't seen the planes for a while. And I was like, what? Who are you? So she said, oh yeah, no, I know. She said, I saw about the Second World War. I knew they were doing weather manipulation in the Second World War. And I said, well, that changes the conversation a bit. So people are waking up even to a degree that I didn't think possible. My mom was somebody who really didn't like Trump. She would watch Ellen and I would say, Ellen is not your friend. She's lying to you. Ellen is lying to you. She's pretending to be your friend to lie to you, Mom. And so I said, turn this garbage off. Like, it's not very good. And then Ellen was canceled. So thank goodness. But people change, man. So, I think that people have more open mind, but I think it's so crazy that people are still going to have a hard time believing the reality of what we've been through. Even just COVID was pretty crazy. Like COVID, if you understand what actually happened, bonkers that we lived through it. And it's like the bombing of London, honestly. It's just a different psychological bombing. Robin Minotti says, did USAID pay for the choreographers? Robin Minotti again says, why did so many nurses perform dances during the pandemic? Were they being paid? Yes, they were being paid. Here's some receipts for that. I believe Elon Musk says, can you believe that universities with tens of billions of endowments were siphoning off 60% of research award money for overhead? What a ripoff. And the NIH is the National Institute of Health, and they say last year $9 billion of $35 billion that the National Institute of Health granted for research was used for administrative overhead, which is known as indirect costs. Today, NIH lowered the maximum indirect cost research institutions can charge the government to 15%. So that's interesting. And so maybe this isn't hospitals, but I think this extrapolates, right? If the universities were taking $9 billion from USAID for quote unquote research and other staff members and things like that, I think that hospitals could probably have money from these type of grants and then funnel it into hiring nurses for choreography, hiring a choreographer for nurses, things like that. So it's interesting. Anyway, who knows? But it seems like that's a good bet. Here's Wall Street Maverick. He says, a country run by banks will always be in debt. Healthcare run by big pharma will never cure diseases. A state run by war will never know peace. A nation run by media will never know the truth. Fair enough. Absolutely true, I think, as well. Here is Data Republican, and this is a good follow if you're interested. He's going through, and they're the ones who created the searchable database. They uploaded the data and they created a repository on GitHub and then migrated it to a URL so people can just go in and search the database if they're interested. And so they're publishing their findings in reports and things like that. It's behind a paywall, but there you go. They've done the work. And they say Ann S., a director of Internews Network, also serves as the VP of Communications at Reddit. So if Internews Network is run by the people who are training journalists on misinformation and disinformation, and those people are the ones who are running Reddit is corrupt. Reddit is a corrupt place full of censorship that has a direct line to the top of the censorship pyramid, right? There is no way they're going to allow you to have a conversation that's real on Reddit because Internews Network is making sure that you don't, right? And they're running cover to get you removed if you dare to violate their policies, right? And they think that their policies supersede law. I think they're going to find out. Grummas says, it's all fake. It's all groupthink training. It's all propaganda. USAID paid nearly $500 million to fund Internews. What do? They trained journalists, 70,000 of them, and implemented the media policies of of 21 countries, I think, infiltrated. They gave free production equipment to produce 6,200 hours of television and radio programs. They have someone sitting as VP of comms on Reddit. The woke agenda was not organic. It's Rachel Gilmore being paid to shit talk on Reddit. That's what it is. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful